The hum of the airport was a dull ache in my ears. I was tired, so very tired. All I wanted was my gate, my flight, and then the quiet of my own home. I leaned my head back against the uncomfortable plastic chair, closing my eyes for just a moment. But then I heard it. A voice. Sharp, ugly. It sliced right through the weariness. My eyes snapped open, and my exhaustion? It vanished, replaced by a cold, hard knot forming in my stomach. It started like any other airport complaint. A young man, his voice dripping with impatience, was grumbling about the flight delay. We were all delayed. It was one of those days, but his tone was different. It wasn't just frustration. It was entitlement, arrogance. It grated on me, but I tried to tune it out. Just another rude person in a world full of them, I thought. Then his attention shifted. I didn't see who he focused on at first, but I heard the change in his voice. It became mocking, disdainful. "Look at this," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone in our crowded little waiting area to hear. "Some people just don't get it. Always in the way." My head turned. My heart gave a painful throb. He was talking about an older gentleman. This man was sitting quietly, patiently. He had a cap on, one that spoke of service, of a past that deserved respect. I heard the soft, almost imperceptible whir of wheels beneath his chair. He wasn't bothering anyone, he was just existing. Waiting. Like the rest of us. Seriously, the young man continued, oblivious or worse, enjoying the attention he was drawing. These old-timers, they think the world owes them something, just because they managed to get old. A shocked silence fell over our little corner of the airport. You could have heard a pin drop. My breath caught in my throat. Did he really just say that? Out loud? About this dignified elderly man? My blood began to simmer. It wasn't a hot, quick anger, it was a slow, cold burn. I looked around, or rather, I sensed the other passengers. The air was thick with unspoken disapproval. Heads were turned slightly. Eyes were downcast, but no one spoke. No one moved. My own heart hammered against my ribs. Part of me screamed, "Say something." Another, smaller, more timid part whispered, "It's not your business, don't make a scene." The veteran didn't react, not outwardly. He just sat there, his hands resting in his lap. But I could feel his stillness. It wasn't a calm stillness. It was the stillness of someone bracing themselves. Of someone who had endured far worse, yet was still wounded by such casual cruelty. The young man, emboldened by the lack of immediate challenge, let out a short, barking laugh. Probably expects a parade every time he leaves the house. He sneered, he gestured. A dismissive flick of his hand. I didn't need to see the gesture clearly to feel its sting. It was aimed directly at the quiet dignity of the older man. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The tiredness, the frustration of my own delayed journey, the desire to just blend in, it all evaporated. All that remained was a fierce protective surge. This was wrong. Utterly, undeniably wrong. And silence, my silence, felt like complicity. I stood up. My legs felt a little shaky, but my voice, when it came, was surprisingly steady. "Excuse me," I said. My tone wasn't loud, but it was clear. Clear enough to cut through the young man's next planned remark. He turned, an annoyed look on his face. "Yeah?" he asked, his voice still laced with that awful arrogance. "I think," I began, choosing my words carefully, "that you owe that gentleman an apology." The young man scoffed. Actually scoffed. An apology, for what? For telling the truth. He looked around, as if expecting support. He found none. Only averted gazes and a heavy, judging silence. "For being disrespectful," I said, my voice gaining a little more strength. "For being cruel. That man," I gestured towards the veteran, "has likely done more, sacrificed more than you can possibly imagine." The young man's face began to flush. A dull red crept up his neck. "Oh, here we go," he said, rolling his eyes. "The hero worship. He's just old. Get over it." My heart ached. How could anyone be so callous? "Age isn't the point," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Respect is. Decency is. He served this country. That cap he wears, it means something. It represents a commitment, a bravery, that you clearly don't understand." The young man opened his mouth to retort, but then another voice joined mine. A deep, calm voice from a few seats away. "She's right, son." It was a middle-aged man, someone who looked like he might have seen a bit of life himself. "You're way out of line." Suddenly, it wasn't just me. The atmosphere shifted. A few other people murmured their agreement. The young man looked flustered now, his bravado starting to crack. He was no longer the confident bully. He was just a loudmouth, exposed. He mumbled something under his breath, something about free speech and everyone being too sensitive. But then the veteran himself spoke. His voice was quiet, a little raspy, but it carried a weight that silenced everyone. "It's all right, miss," he said, looking at me with a gentle expression. His eyes, though, held a deep sadness. "Some people, they just don't know." He paused, then added, so softly it was almost a whisper, "This cap. It reminds me of the brothers I lost. The ones who didn't get to grow old." The air left the young man's lungs in a whoosh. His face, which had been flushed with anger, now turned pale. The words, simple and heartfelt, hung in the air. They were more powerful than any shout, any argument I could have made. They were a truth that cut to the bone. The young man looked down at his shoes. He fidgeted. He couldn't meet the veteran's gaze. He couldn't meet mine. The fight was gone from him, replaced by a shame so palpable you could almost taste it. An airline employee, who must have been alerted by the commotion, approached discreetly. She assessed the situation quickly. She spoke softly to the young man, who just nodded, still looking at the floor. Then she moved to the veteran. "Sir," she said kindly, "your new boarding information is ready. We can get you pre-boarded now, if you like." He nodded, a small tired smile touching his lips. "Thank you, dear," he said to her. Then he looked at me. "And thank you," he said, his voice full of a quiet gratitude that warmed me from the inside out. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," I replied softly. "Everyone deserves respect." As the airline employee gently guided the veteran's wheelchair towards the gate, the young man just stood there for a moment. Then, without a word, without looking at anyone, he picked up his bag and walked away, disappearing into the airport crowd. He didn't get on our flight. I learned later he'd been moved to a different one. I finally sat back down, my heart still beating a little fast. The man who had backed me up gave me a respectful nod. A woman across the aisle smiled at me. It was a small thing, what I did. Just a few words. But it felt important. The flight was eventually called. I found my seat, and as the plane took off, I thought about the veteran. About his quiet dignity. About the young man's shocking cruelty, and about the surprising courage I found in myself. A few days passed. Life returned to its normal rhythm. I almost forgot about the incident. Almost. Then a friend sent me a link. "Is this you?" she asked. I clicked on it. My stomach did a little flip. It was a video. Shaky, obviously filmed on a phone. It started with the young man's loud, obnoxious complaints. It captured his cruel words to the veteran. And then, it captured me. Standing up, speaking out. It even caught the veteran's quiet, heartbreaking words. The video was everywhere. It had a title like "Young Man Mocks Veteran. Bystander Shuts Him Down." It had millions of views. Millions. My face wasn't clear, nor was anyone else's really. But my voice was. And the story it told was. I scrolled through the comments. There were thousands. Overwhelmingly they were supportive. People praised me for speaking up. They condemned the young man's behavior in no uncertain terms. Many shared their own stories of respecting veterans, or their own experiences with disrespect. Then came the first twist. Someone in the comments recognized the young man. They named him. They even mentioned where he worked. Within hours, his company issued a statement. They said they were aware of the video, that his behavior did not reflect their values, and that he was no longer employed by them. It was swift. It was public. A part of me felt a grim satisfaction, but another part felt a twinge of something else. His life was undoubtedly turned upside down because of a few minutes of unchecked arrogance. A harsh lesson, but perhaps a necessary one. But the story didn't end there. The real magic happened next. Because of the video, people started asking about the veteran. Who was he? Was he okay? The internet, for all its faults, can sometimes be a force for incredible good. Amateur sleuths, moved by his quiet dignity, managed to find out a little more. His name was Mr. Henderson. He was a Vietnam veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. He was traveling that day to meet his great-grandchild for the very first time. The delay, the rudeness, it had all been an unwelcome stress on what should have been a joyous journey. And then, the outpouring began. People wanted to help him. A crowdfunding page was set up, not by me, but by a veterans support group that saw the video. Donations flooded in. Messages of love and respect poured in for Mr. Henderson. Enough was raised to ensure his trip was comfortable, and to help with some of his ongoing medical expenses, things related to his service that he'd been quietly struggling with. I read about this online, my eyes blurring with tears. My small act, amplified by an unseen camera phone and the power of the internet, had blossomed into something so much bigger. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about him. It was about acknowledging his sacrifice, his worth. A few weeks later, I received a message. It was from Mr. Henderson's granddaughter. She had tracked me down through a comment I'd eventually left on one of the shares of the video, just saying I was glad he was getting the respect he deserved. She wanted to thank me personally. She told me how much the support had meant to her grandfather. How it had restored a little bit of his faith in people. She said he often spoke of the kind lady at the airport. She sent me a photo. Mr. Henderson, holding a tiny baby, his face alight with a joy so pure it made my heart swell. That was the real ending. Not the shaming of a rude young man, but the honoring of a good one. I never sought out to be a hero. I'm not brave, not usually. That day something just clicked. Seeing that injustice, that casual cruelty aimed at someone so deserving of honor, I just couldn't stay silent. Sometimes, I still feel a little jolt when I think about how public it all became. My voice, my words, out there for millions. But then I remember Mr. Henderson's face in that photograph. I remember his quiet dignity in the face of ugliness. And I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that I would do it all again. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice to change the story. To turn a moment of ugliness into an opportunity for kindness, for respect, and for a whole lot of people to be reminded of what truly matters. It taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling that fear, that discomfort, and speaking up anyway. Because some things are too important to let slide. Some people are too important to let be diminished. What started as a moment of anger and frustration in a crowded airport waiting room became a lesson for me, and for many others, I think. A lesson about respect, about courage, and about the unexpected ways our actions can ripple outwards. And it all started because a tired woman decided she'd had enough of listening to cruelty go unchallenged. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched you or made you think, please give this video a like, and share it with others who might need to hear it. Don't forget to comment below, with your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed something similar? And of course subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Your support helps us keep sharing these important moments.